In contrast to 8's attention to control, Type 1 is more concerned with maintaining high standards of correctness and responsibility. 1s create clear and fair guidelines by which they live and lead others. They display high integrity and focus on continual improvement and excellence. They feel most comfortable when things are error-free, so they are extremely good at producing a quality product or service. However, their focus on correcting error may cause them to believe that there's only one right way, which diminishes their flexibility and blinds them to the value in the diverse and differing standards of others.
I think the main factor that convinced me of my oneness was the presence of a very strong inner critic. I have a very critical inner voice. It's a voice that is very judgmental, very critical of myself and of others as well. But in terms of myself, an example would be where if I came up with an idea for my business, almost immediately the critical voice would come up with 3 or 4 reasons why that probably wouldn't work and not worth the effort and just don't bother and so on. Before I became aware of my oneness, I tended to fall into habits of judging myself very harshly, judging other people harshly. The other thing about ones is that we tend to decide upon one right way of doing something and then tending to be fairly inflexible, even rigid about that one right way. And so as a result now, after a lot of work, I have to say, I am trying to be much more flexible, trying to pay attention to the quality of the relationships in the workplace, as well as to the end results and the methodology of getting there. The biggest challenge is to have that flexibility and have a more inner coach voice for myself and for others to counterbalance that inner critic voice. The inner critic is still useful in some ways because there's a discernment and an attention to error or an attention to what might be out of place and not going well. And the inner critic can then be useful in terms of driving one to address those errors. I tended to hold people in authority to very high standards, overly high standards. So anybody at the VP level and above, I tended to judge them rather harshly, and that didn't do me much good. And something about the ones is that their criticalness of others, it's hard for them to hide. It certainly was hard for me to hide. I would probably go through a long period of silent resentment and not do anything, but inside building up a real head of steam about what was wrong. And then when it came out, of course, it came out in a big gush and in often very destructive ways. Well, as a type 1, I certainly am aware that I have a drive towards continuous improvement. And quite frankly, I like it. I like looking back over my efforts at making improvements and just recognizing that many of them have paid off. In fact, sometimes I look back and I'm just absolutely amazed and very, very pleased with the distance that I've come. I think by their nature, 1 leaders tend to be very conscientious. They tend to be responsible. and they tend to have a drive towards clarity. My focus used to be pretty much on what needs to be done, what I'm responsible for, or what I feel I'm responsible for, or what I make myself responsible for. That always came first, and so there wasn't really a lot of enjoyment in my life, I would say. My knowledge of my type has really helped me to develop that side of myself that is more able to relax, to be in the moment, to really realize that almost every moment is a perfect moment.
An important leadership development challenge for ones is to maintain their high standards and devotion to improvement while quieting their critical mind and accepting that mistakes are a natural part of life.